Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Today's video we're going to start off by talking more about congressional districts. More specifically, we are going to be talking about gerrymandering. Now, gerrymandering, I know that it looks like a very weird word that is spelled correctly up there. But this is going to tie into what I was talking about in the last video. Now, if you remember back, just to refresh your memory, whenever these congressional districts, whenever it was first decided to go this route, there were rules in place that said that, they had to be of, compact size, they had to all be connected, you couldn't make them scattered, and they should be roughly equal in size. Well, if you also remember in the last video, I said some of those rules were essentially ignored, and the Supreme Court ruled that whenever those rules aren't being followed, then they're just not really in effect anymore. And whenever there's a census, the districts are redrawn, and whenever those rules kind of go away, you end up with situations like this, and the situation is called gerrymandering. This is something you're going to want to remember. This is in some people's opinion, a very big issue in our political process. And if nothing else, it's a word that would probably get you a lot of points on Scrabble. So, let's get started. Gerrymandering. Congressional district maps vary in several states, show one and sometimes several districts of very odd shapes. Some look like the letters S or Y and resemble a dumbbell or a squiggly piece of spaghetti, and some defy description. Those districts have usually been gerrymandered. That is, they have been drawn to the advantage of the political party that controls the state's legislature. And whenever I say political party, I mean Republicans and Democrats. They both do it. Neither party is innocent here. Gerrymandering is widespread today, and not just at the congressional district level. Districts for the election of state legislators are regularly drawn for the advantage of one party. In fact, gerrymandering can be found in most places where lines are drawn for the election of public office holders, in cities, counties, school districts, and elsewhere. If you look at this picture, this is a congressional district that includes Chicago. Look on this map here. Why in the world would it be drawn like this? And you see this part here and here? They're connected. Do you see this very tiny, you may not even be able to see it on the video, this very tiny little sliver that connects the two? You know what's there? I actually looked this up. I watched a video about it. In that tiny little sliver, that's actually a highway. And the median in the middle of the highway where that grass grows? That's what that is. It's technically a strip of land, but no one lives there. But they use that tiny strip of land in the middle of a highway, the median of the highway, to justify connecting these two districts together. And we're going to get into why people would want to do this. Most often, gerrymandering takes one of two forms. The lines are drawn either, one, to concentrate the opposition's voters in one or a few districts, thus leaving the other districts comfortably safe for the dominant party, or two, to spread the opposition as thinly as possible among several districts, limiting the opposition's ability to win anywhere in the region. Gerrymandering's main goal is to create as many safe districts as possible, districts almost certain to be won by the party in control of the line drawing process. And the computer-driven map-making techniques of today make the practice more effective than ever in its storied past. So let's talk more about gerrymandering. Here's a good example. Now let's look at this. Don't worry about the other two right now. Just look on this on the left. Let's imagine that this is a city. And this city is divided into these 50 precincts, these 50 little sections. And 60% of the districts here are going to vote blue. 40% are going to vote red. So if you just look at them, on a whole and you don't divide them into districts, blue wins. 60% blue. Blue wins. Now let's look here. We have 5 districts. We've just drawn lines simply across to make these equal, even-shaped boxes. There are 5 districts. Now, if each of these districts votes, every single time, there's going to be 5 blue districts. Blue wins every time. Now let's take that same, we are not changing. If you look in all 3 of these examples, the colors are not changing. The only thing that is changing are the lines. Now let's draw these lines really weird. Now if you see how all of these are drawn in these weird T shapes and C, and yeah, it's just really weird shapes. Still 5 districts. It's still the same, but now there are 3 districts where red is the majority and 2 districts where blue is the majority. Red wins. Do you see what the issue is here now? Now take this and do it to a major city, metropolitan area, do this to a state, and if you have the pen to redraw the lines, you can make it say whatever you want. Let's go back and look at this again. Now, are you starting to see why they would have these weird shapes? Those weird shapes are all over the country. If you look at a map of where some of these districts are drawn, they make no sense unless you see what they're doing here. You see what the idea is here. By drawing these lines in specific ways, the party that is in control can essentially make the map look however they want. And both sides do this. It's been done numerous times, and sometimes the politicians aren't even shy about saying that they're doing it. It's a pretty dirty trick, honestly. So, moving on. Gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is the principal reason why, presently, only a handful of seats in the House are actually at risk in an election. In most elections, no more than 40 members now represent districts that cannot be classified as more or less safe districts. For decades, gerrymandering led to congressional districts that differed widely in the number of people they included. State legislatures were responsible for this situation, of course. A number of them regularly drew district lines on a partisan basis, with the Republicans gouging the Democrats in those states where the GOP controlled the legislature, and the Democrats doing the same to the Republicans where they held sway. In fact, that circumstance exists in several states today. Historically, most states were carved up on the rural versus urban basis as well as a partisan one, because, through much of history, the typical state legislature was dominated by the less populated and overrepresented rural areas of the state. Here's another district. Look at this. There's no reason that this district needs to stretch for this far and have these jagged edges and all that. It's crazy. It's a situation that's a real issue, and no one really seems to be doing anything about it because politicians on all sides get major benefit by doing this. Westbury v. Sanders, 1964. The long-standing pattern of congressional districts of widely varying populations and, as a result, the long-standing fact of rural overrepresentation in the House came to an abrupt end in the mid to late 1960s. That dramatic change was the product of a historic Supreme Court decision in 1964. In a case from Georgia, Westbury v. Sanders, the Supreme Court held that the Constitution demands that the states draw congressional districts of substantially equal populations. The court's one-person, one-vote decision in Westbury had an immediate and extraordinary impact on the makeup of the House, on the content of public policy, and on the shape of electoral politics in general. The nation's cities and suburbs now speak with a much louder voice in Congress than they did before that decision. But notice, it remains quite possible for states to draw their congressional or any other district lines in accord with the one-person, one-vote rule, and at the same time gerrymander those districts. So while While this Supreme Court decision helped, the practice is still alive and well today. Gerrymandering based solely on race, however, is a violation of the 15th Amendment. Gomillan v. Lightfoot, 1960, so-called majority-minority districts were drawn in some states following the census in 1990 and again in 2000. Those districts were crafted to include a majority of African Americans and/or Latinos, and so were likely to send African Americans and Latinos to Congress. The Supreme Court struck down those race-based districts in several cases, most notably in two cases from Texas, Bush v. Vera, 1996, and United Latin American Citizens v. Perry, 2006. However, the court has also held this. While race cannot be the controlling factor in drawing district lines, race can be one of the mix of factors that shape that process. It did so in a case from North Carolina, Hunt v. Cromartie, in 2001. So, while they can use almost any reasoning to draw congressional lines, doing it on the basis of race is actually strictly illegal and a violation of the 15th Amendment. Partisan gerrymandering. The court has said that under some circumstances, which it has never spelled out, excessively partisan gerrymandering might be unconstitutional. It did so for the first time in a 1986 case, Davis v. Bandemer. In 2003, Texas became the first state to redistrict between censuses, with the purpose of increasing the number of Republican-held Texas seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. In a dramatic showdown, the Republican governor called a special session of the legislature. Democratic legislators fled the state, but ultimately, they were unable to stop the redistricting. In a 2006 decision, a bare majority of the court ruled that neither the Constitution nor any act of Congress prevents a state from redrawing its district lines whenever the party in control of the legislature believes that it might be to its advantage to do so. So, there have been fights over gerrymandering for many years now, but the practice is still alive and well. Alright, let's talk about House elections. According to the Constitution, any person whom a state allows to vote for members of the most numerous branch of its own legislature is qualified to vote in the congressional elections. The Constitution also provides that the times, place, and manner of holding congressional elections shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time, by law, make or alter such regulations. So, the Constitution says you have to have some rules in place, but if you need to change them, that's okay. People line up to vote in 2008. Gerrymandering affects the political influence of a group of people by putting them in a single district or by splitting them among several districts. Setting the date. Elections for Congress are held on the same day in every state since 1872. Congress has required that those elections be held on the Tuesday following the first Monday in November of each even-numbered year. Congress has made an exception for Alaska, which may hold its election in October. To date, however, Alaskans have chosen to use the November date. In that same 1872 law, Congress directed that representatives be chosen by written or printed ballots. The use of voting machines was approved in 1899. Today, most votes cast in congressional elections are cast on some type of voting device, usually electronic. Those are the type of voting machines that we use today. It simply just makes it a lot easier to tally up the votes and all of that whenever it's done electronically, done by computer. It just makes it a lot quicker, simpler, and safer. Off-year elections. Those congressional elections that occur in non-presidential years, that is, between presidential elections, are called off-year election. The next ones will occur in, since whenever the book was written, 2014 and 2018. They're called off-year elections because they are not on the same year that a president will be elected. Now, the years that a president is elected, the voter turnout is much higher. But the other ones are called off-year elections. Far more often than not, the party that holds the presidency loses seats in the off-year elections. The most recent exception occurred in 2002 in the first election to be held after the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001. The Republicans, sparked by the campaign efforts of President Bush, regained control of the Senate and padded their slim majority in the House. The party in power lost seats in the 2010 off-year elections, however. The Republicans, riding a wave of popular dissatisfaction with a stubbornly sluggish economy, captured control of the House while the Democrats retained their hold on the Senate. Alright guys, that's going to be it for today. If you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me in all the normal ways. I hope everybody's having a great day, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye.